Ingeborg, on the cover of your book you've got a photograph from Symbiotica A. And my question is to do with the ethical relationship with artists. For example, the green bunny. Whereas a scientist, to make a green bunny, has to get ethical approval and so on. And I'm not recommending that for artists, but I'm wondering how you see that relationship. It's one thing for artists to be testing the ethical limits and, in a sense, defying convention. But there comes a point where they might release organisms and so on. How do you see that relationship being appropriately managed?
Yeah, I think this
You're talking about genetically engineering a rabbit to be green.
Yes, the luminous bunny was genetically engineered.
There's a Brazilian American artist who made in the year 2000 a project called Alba 2000, and he pretended that he produced a rabbit that could emit that was like glowing in the dark. Or glowing when you put UV light on it. We never know if this, is true or if you just made it up. But the thing is, to come back to your question, I think that at the moment it is like that a lot of artists use technology or methods from science, I would say, that are a bit outdated. They use whatever tools in the lab that scientists probably won't use for 2, 3, 4 years anymore. And so I don't think, and of course there are ethical questions involved, but very often artists do not have access to cutting-edge technology in the lab. So still nowadays I think the ethical question is bound more to the scientist side. But as soon as genetic engineering becomes more and more popular to do for almost everybody, because in Germany, for example, we have more than 50 high schools that are focused on biotechnology. When you're 13 or 14 years old, you go and have, as your first topic, you are educated in the field of biotechnology. These people then, in summertime, go to the Cancer Research Institution and get even more, familiar with that. So almost, you can't say every child, but a lot of children nowadays in Germany are able to manipulate DNA and things like that on a very basic level. So this gets more and more people in Germany get more and more familiar with that. And a little bit it's the same with what we have seen with with computers or computer studies. 30 years ago, a computer was a heavy, huge, expensive tool. Nowadays, everybody's got it in one's pocket, and maybe we see the same development in this field, like in the life science or bioengineering era. So we have to think what kind of ethics we're gonna have, and this is bound to religion. In Germany, we have different laws than in Israel or probably in China, but the technology is the same. If you want to clone an organism, it's the same tool, but you have different rules. And I think these questions come up when artists do these things, but not. I don't know any artist who did really things for the first time. Mostly this where technology is used by scientists before in this discussion, but when they did it and they show it in public, like in a gallery, all of a sudden people were aware, oops, what's going on here? We have to talk about it.
I was just wondering, the artists here who are collaborating with the scientists, right? Do they tend to engage more in high art, or is it more of popular art? And I'm wondering if there's any difference. Do they not distinguish between these two, or do they tend more to be from the high art? Because I'm wondering if there are implications in this in terms of how it engages with the public. Because from what I get from what you say is the aim is to publicize and to bring into light ethical considerations or interesting things that scientists are doing for the scientists who collaborate with the artists and so on and so forth. And the second thing I was thinking of was that if the artists here engage more in popular art, will it affect the way in which the collaborations work in terms of the nature? Like, will they be driven more by money or more for the publicity or what? And will it affect the quality of these collaborations?
I think there are some artists who think they are really like think about one example of Mark Quinn. He's a British artist, and he exhibited a DNA portrait in the National Portrait Gallery in London. And I think I don't know about money for that, and I think if you would, the thing is, like, William called this high art, and of course we have, especially in British art, we see some artists who go into the lab and work with, like scientists, mostly Nobel Prize winners and things like that. And of course there's a lot of money involved, and then, like, well-respected institutions like the, as I just said, National Gallery, Portrait Gallery in London, then exhibit these artworks. Of course some artists are trying to stay on such a level, but most artists I know, they have quite good, like, I would say, salaries from their institutions and professorships, teach the students, and they're not so much of, like, into making big money. But of course, you can earn quite a bit in contemporary art as an artist. There's especially before the crisis in 2008, there was a huge art, and people are, like, spending a fortune on little DNA pictures. This happens, but most artists I met, they are more driven, as you just said, by showing to society, or having a social component in what they do. But I think there are so many artists out there who get involved with art and science project, but that you can't really say this is the one group and this is the other. I think there are many different perspective and ways of handling this situation.
It leaves me with an uncomfortable sense that have we lost the ability to do both? Is there anyone you know who has really crisscrossed these worlds enough so that they've become hybrid?
To be honest, if you want to be part of a scientific community and publish and be on conferences and things like that, and probably when they get like a paper in Nature, you have very often not enough time for also producing art. But I met quite a lot of interesting people at the Cancer Research Institute in Heidelberg, like Harald Zurhausen, who got the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2008. And if you meet these, I would call them talented and brainy people in a conversation, you see that they have very similar questions like artists have, and they are very open to art, although they do not have time to work in their lab, because Harald Zurhausen still goes to his lab every day, but I never could, like, get him interested in a real collaboration. But one of his colleagues, he is very much into the topic now, and I met him in 2004 for the first time, and we did a lot of interesting collaborations. And actually, he has time and money as much more than people in the humanities, so he's very open. But therefore, because he's very aware that science is also going through some troubled times, because they get question or like ask where is our society heading with these tools we're producing in the lab and things like that. So I think there are hybrid, it's called creatures or hybrid, like biographies, but not yeah, I think if you don't want Leonardo to be the first art and science hybrid, my PhD supervisor wrote a huge book on Galileo, and his idea was that Galileo was not the first, but was the one who put such influential observation, because he was also an artist. And I think this is a very interesting combination. Nowadays, unfortunately, I would say scientists only work with computers and mathematical models, produced by mathematicians and things like that. But in former days, there were hybrids. Like Galileo always looked, at the sky, and then he had to draw, and the whole, interplay between observation and then producing a visual artifact this is the idea or the thesis of this book on Galileo as an artist, that he had some tactile knowledge, that he had to have some visual encounter of what he was doing. So he learned, he taught himself, he learned himself, he was educated also as a I can't say artist, but he had to learn how to draw. And a lot of scientists in the history of science went through this process, and nowadays a lot of scientists just don't have to do this anymore. We have different tools, different technologies, and this just stopped, I guess, 30, 40 years ago. Because when the computer entered, science, a whole different, qualities were necessary to do research, and in some areas like botany or archaeology, students still have to learn how to draw because they see something. The observation is a very interesting, very important process, and then they have to learn how to draw it on a two-dimensional paper. But science is just developing so fast in the field of informatics and computer sciences that now our students have probably not even an idea that their PhD supervisors were trained when they were young in drawing and things like that. So the development is so fast in science that probably maybe we get these hybrids again, to come back to your question, but maybe not on a visual level.